Hey guys, and welcome to Anchor to Truth. Tonight we are diving into chapter 17 in the book of Jubilees. So let's get started.
All right, guys, let's jump right into verse 1 here. It says, "In the first year of the 5th week, Isaac was weaned in this Jubilee, and Abraham made a great banquet in the 3rd month on the day his son Isaac was weaned. And Ishmael, the son of Hagar, the Egyptian, was before the face of Abraham, his father, in his place. And Abraham rejoiced and blessed Elohim because he had seen his sons, and he had not died childless. He remembered the words which he had spoken to him on the day on which Lot had parted from him, and he rejoiced because Yahuwah had given him seed upon the earth to inherit the earth, and he blessed with all his mouth the creator of all things." Well, so far, guys, it looks like the family unit's still pretty strong here. Everybody's still together.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure, not that it's important, but I was curious. I know each culture is a little bit different when they wean a child, so I wonder if this would give us any indication of how old Isaac is.
Yeah, it'd be definitely something fun to look into, especially because of the level of effort that went into and the thought process behind it. You know, they made a great banquet. So I mean, it said in the 3rd month on that day. So I wonder if it was at 3 months, but that seems a bit early. But yeah, definitely the process of growing up and becoming a child. You're no longer a baby. And I think that's one of the things of you've made it past that age of where life is still fragile, where things could still go south. Hey, now you're eating meat, now you're eating food, now you're able to kind of hold your own head up, essentially. You can keep yourself alive, you can grab the Cheerios or whatever. And as we're kind of looking at that, to see that really great banquet, this was a big deal for him. And I appreciate that of there being celebrations. And I know in our world today we kind of look at some of the can we celebrate 4th of July, or can you celebrate this? And is anything outside of the commanded feasts and Sabbaths wrong to do? And apparently not. They were having a banquet for the kid because he was getting older. And that's a really cool story. And I think it shows, his heart for the child and for the children. And I think it's something that we can all learn from that is, children are a blessing. Children are one of the greatest things that God can give a person. And even if we don't have any of in and of ourselves, we can bless those around us and the other children in our communities. And, God has that in place even for those as well.
Yeah.
I had a weird idea here. I want to share. So he's having a banquet for Isaac being weaned, and this probably has no connection whatsoever, but it was kind of curious that, do you guys remember how old Yeshua would have been at the time that the wise men visited and gave the gold, the myrrh and all that stuff, the frankincense? Any idea?
Around like 2, maybe.
Right. So I don't know. I was just kind of curious, since there's a banquet here on the Abraham's on a banquet for him being weaned. So I'm wondering if this is almost something similar to where they're saying at this age, because they weren't there for his birth, of course, but like the nativity scenes and all that stuff show you. So anyway, just part of this, and it's probably no correlation to that, but just thought it was kind of interesting that they showed up at this time in his life when he probably would have been weaned, I would guess. I don't know what their culture, again, is it 2 years old, 3 years old? When do they actually do this process? And I wonder if that was something that they showed up at that time to bless the family. I don't know. Just throwing it out there.
So I wanted to point out in verse 2 here, it says, Abraham rejoiced and blessed Elohim because he had seen his sons and had not died childless. So, obviously, people rejoice when they have children, right? And especially in his situation, he's up there in age. He's really excited that this is happening. But it says Abram rejoiced and blessed Elohim because he had seen his sons and had not died childless. And I know I'm kind of reading into this a little bit, but it's as if to say, did he possibly have some doubt that was going to happen?
Maybe,
right?
maybe a little.
He's rejoicing because he had not died childless. Like that was a thought that he might still have in the back of his mind, at least, kind of thing. I just thought that would be to bring up.
To follow that train of thought, I think, actually you probably spot on, because in verse 3 it says, when he had spoken to him on the day on which Lot had parted from him. And I know in one of our previous episodes we talked about, Lot, Abraham taking Lot under his wing almost as if it was a child. And the father was like, I appreciate you for doing that. And that's really a servant's heart, but that's not the child of promise. That's not what we're talking about. You're going to have your own child, right, distinctly from you alone, not from, an adopted type situation. So I think God honored him and knew his heart with the situation with Lot, but that's why he's recounting it here. Hey, yes, Lot was a thing, but you were going to have your own kid. And then so right before they were saying, yep, I made sure to follow through with my promise. I'm not going to promise you something and then break it. So, the whole situation with Lot was cool. And I'm glad that you took care of him and took him under your wing and, pray for the best with him. Obviously, we see that story didn't play out all that well. But we do see now that he did have this child of promise, which is an amazing thing.
Absolutely. I thought this was cool. Down here in verse 3, it says, and he blessed with all his mouth the creator of all things, with all of his mouth, his whole mouthful area.
It's like, how many words can you say before you run out of breath?
It's I'm guessing that this is maybe some shouting going on here is what I'm thinking.
Right.
But I just thought that was funny the way that was worded. He blessed
He was
with
like,
all
man,
his
he
mouth.
was blessing the Father with so much mouth, I can count all of his teeth at one time.
Even the ones in the back.
Even the ones in the back, yeah. Hey, are you missing a back molar, bro? Wait a minute. What's that?
Oh, that's funny.
All right, guys, let's get into verse 4, and then we're going to see this happy family not going to be so much happy as we read further along here. And it says, and Sarah saw Ishmael playing and dancing, and Abraham rejoicing with great joy. And she became jealous of Ishmael and said to Abraham, cast out this bondwoman and her son, for the son of this bondwoman will not be heir with my son Isaac. And the thing was grievous in Abraham's sight because of his maidservant and because of his son, that he should drive them from him. And Elohim said to Abraham, let it not be grievous in thy sight because of the child and because of the bondwoman. And all that Sarah hath said unto thee, hearken to her words and do them. For in Isaac shall thy name and seed be called. But as for the son of this bondwoman, I will make him a great nation, because he is thy seed, of thy seed. And Abraham rose up early in the morning and took bread and a bottle of water and placed them on the shoulder of Hagar and the child, and sent her away. And she departed and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba, and the water in the bottle was spent, and the child thirsted, and was not able to go on, and fell down. And his mother took him and cast him under an olive tree, and went and sat her down over against him at a distance of a bow shot, for she said, let me not see the death of my child. And as she sat, she wept.
All right, I wanted to start us off with what Sarah is saying here. She says, cast out this bondwoman and her son, for the son of this bondwoman will not be heir with my son. And then, after the father says, do as she has said, then we see over here in verse 8, it says, and Abraham rose up early in the morning and took bread and a bottle of water and placed them on the shoulders of Hagar and sent them away. You would think that there would be, other than, a loaf or two of bread and a thing of water, you would think he would send them out with more than that. Maybe a little bit of, a little pocket money or something, hey, to kind of help you on your way. You're about to experience some trials and tribulations.
Mm-hmm.
But no, the statement was, for the son of this bondwoman will not be heir with my son. And when he's told to do that, to do those things, that was taken very, very literally. There was nothing given except basic survival stuff.
Right.
Bread and water.
Say, if that.
Right. So that's I see a couple of things going on here. One, I don't see that as something that Abraham would have clearly that's not something that Abraham wanted to do. Right. But he's obeying the father, not just in sending her away, but he's trusting the father that the father is going to take care of her no matter what, because he's not physically providing much of anything for them. So there's a strong showing of faith and trust in the Most High in this.
Yeah, you look at the heart of Abraham had to have been breaking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, he loved Ishmael. I mean, it was no doubt. It wasn't like he was, third wheel or the redheaded stepchild out of the group. He truly loved that. He loved that boy. And so this wasn't an easy decision, I'm sure, for Abraham to make. And I agree with you, Kyle, that I feel like if we were just reading this for what it says, I'm like, man, some bread and some water and only a bottle. I mean, you couldn't have just maybe strapped on some leather, like big gallon size things of water on the back of a mule or something, or a donkey, and send it with them. And, like you said, some walking around money at least, but
they didn't even get a donkey.
Yeah, I know. But that's where I agree with you, though, that because so far, as we've been reading, we're getting to see the heart of Abraham through all the passages that we're reading. And I agree with you that he's trusting that Yahuwah is going to take care of him. Because he's following the instructions of Yahuwah. He says, hey, as your wife has said, go ahead and do it. So in his heart, I believe he's saying, well, if the Father's saying to do this, and I'm going to do it, I'm going to trust that he's going to take care of it. And spoiler alert, when we go further into the story, Of course he does. He takes care.
Yeah, I see it similar to how you guys are seeing it. I think, maybe I'll bring a different lens to it. So, we start off with 4 where it says that Sarah saw them playing and dancing. Essentially, Sarah just got super in her feelings. She was jealous. She's like, hey, hold on. That's not my kid. And I don't want this situation to change or shift anything for my kid. I think it's a big tell in her life, at least at this moment, of some selfishness and some things that maybe she needed to deal with, especially in the fact that I believe if I remember reading correctly, she was the one who proposed Abraham with this situation in the
Yeah,
first place. Hey,
yeah.
why don't you take her and let her be the one who brings forth the child? Now all of a sudden the story's flipped on its head a little bit. Well, I have my own child, send that one away. And so I think when we start kind of reading into that a little bit, it's a tough position to be in because Abraham did nothing wrong. And Ishmael definitely didn't do anything wrong, and Hagar didn't do anything wrong. I mean, it's a situation we have 3 on the surface righteous people and one person that's kind of saying from the outside looking in, I don't like this. And when you kind of go into the more of the story, as you guys were talking about with the bread and the water, I personally don't think that Abraham was saying, "Oh yeah, you're gonna be good to go. It's fine." I think he was like, "This is not gonna work out." Like, I mean, you can see how it goes. The boy almost died, right? She left him and said, I can't even sit next to him right now. I'm gonna go, a couple hundred feet away because I can't watch him die." I don't think Sarah had any intention on them surviving. He said, "I don't want you to be an heir with me at all. I don't want you to be an heir in that land, this land, or any land." It was a Dr. Seuss moment. I don't want you here. I don't want you there. I don't want you anywhere. And
Hmm.
it's I don't know if that's to be true 100%, but man, I'm reading it, and my heart breaks a little bit for this small little family unit of Hagar and Ishmael. They're just like outcast overnight. One minute we have to remember Abraham's rich. Abraham has, we read in the Occult story, the Feast of Tabernacles. He has all these bulls and lambs and goats. He's providing for everybody. He's building houses for everybody. He's dancing around and shouting around the altar every day. And then now to say, oh, all you get is bread and water. That was the least amount of provisions possible to give somebody that he treated her as a wife and he treated the boy as a son. In his mind, I don't think he thought anything different of them. So, to put yourself in that situation, or for us to try to understand even a little bit of where his heart was at, man, how tough is that? How tough would that be? I think, we've kind of glossed over the story sometimes as we're reading through Canon of 66, and this is kind of digging in a little bit. And it's like, yeah, there's something going on here. There's something happening a little bit
Yeah.
more behind the scene.
I'd like to bring in Genesis 21 9. I'm going to read a little bit. Actually, it's going to be 9, 10, and 11. Kind of give us a little bit more backstory on this as well. Pretty much says the same thing. Actually, let's go back up a little bit more. Let's go to 8. And it says, "And a child grew and was weaned," talking about Isaac. "And Abraham made a great feast on the day that Isaac was weaned. And Sarah saw the son of Hagar, the Mitzrayim, whom she had borne to Abraham, mocking. And so she said to Abraham, Drive out this female servant and her son, for the son of this female servant shall not inherit with my son, with Isaac." And it says in 11, it says, "And the matter was very evil in the eyes of Abraham because of his son." I'll go ahead and read 12 too. It says, but Elohim said to Abraham, Let it not be evil in your eyes because of the boy and because of your female servant. Whatever Sarah has said to you, listen to her voice, for in Isaac your seed is called. So a little bit of difference, in that one right there. So we see in this one, the son was mocking, and I don't know what he was doing to mock, but in here it talks about him dancing. And so I don't know. It says in Sarah, and before again, it says, "And Sarah saw Ishmael playing and dancing." And so in the Genesis, we get is he was mocking. So there's something going on that these two stories, they're collaborating, that something was happening that when Sarah saw it, it didn't make her very happy.
Yeah.
So I think with what you brought up there in Genesis, what kind of shows a little bit of Sarah's heart there is that she never called Ishmael her son. She never she never took any ownership of that relationship. She said her son and like her situation, almost as if like I've been fully disassociated with that child and that other relationship. And I think, maybe that helps to lend a little bit of what's going on there as well.
Yeah.
And as we move on in this story, where it speaks about them wandering in the wilderness of Beersheba, and the water in the bottle was spent, and the child thirsted and was not able to go on and fell down. So, we're not talking about, they walked a couple of blocks and ran out of water and I'm too tired. I don't want to keep going. No, I mean, they've been in this for a minute. They're in the wilderness. They're in the desert. They're in the heat. They are struggling.
Yeah.
So there's been a little bit of time go by, and they have run out of provision.
Yep.
I believe that this was, I guess, a type of test of faith for her also, but I don't know if she was aware of the promise.
Mm.
Can y'all think of anything that would lead us to believe that she was familiar with the promise that was given to Abraham concerning Ishmael and his lineage?
I mean, I could only assume that she would have known. I think the way that Abraham's spoken so far, and the way that the line of communication has been very open with Sarah, with Hagar, Sarah and Hagar before they're falling apart right here. I would assume that, especially as soon as Isaac was born, it would have been like, oh, so great, now my son's going to get the short end of the stick. It's like, no, 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 God already promised me that he's going to be of 12 princes. Yeah, Isaac's going to be the 12 kings, and we understand that because he was the literal child of promise, and we tried to circumnavigate a little bit the scenario. But I would say that at least there was probably some awareness, maybe not in detail, but I think there would have had to been some awareness, because
Right.
it shows that Abraham was playing with the little boy as if he was his own, as if it was his firstborn. When you really look at it, that was his first child. So of course he would have treated him with love and earnestness.
Yeah, and I see Abraham again. When we see his character, I see him, just for me personally, I see Abraham as just having this really big heart. When his brother dies and he takes Lot as a son. It wasn't like, this is my nephew. He took Lot he didn't have any children, of course. So he takes Lot as a son, and guess what happens? Lot leaves, does his own thing. So I'm sure there was a little bit of emotion there. He's like, Lot's going to start his own family. Then you see the heart of Abraham again when the messenger's there saying, hey, by the way, the two guys who just left going over to Sodom and Gomorrah, they're going to destroy that place. And so then you see him pleading with the Lord again on behalf of Lot, like, hey, if there's, we know the whole story of there's all the way down. I think, if there was 10 righteous, would you save the city? And God's finally, yes, if there's 10 there righteous, I will save the city. And then all of a sudden you see him get a son now through the bondmaid. And he, of course, he's grown to love, he's going to love this child. It's his child. And so then you see this ripping again in his heart where there's like, now the Lord saying, hey, listen to your wife and send him away. But don't worry, because when we go back and we look at it, and the reason why I believe he was having faith in the Father is because of 7. In verse 7 it says, but as for the son of this bondwoman, I will make him a great nation, because he is of thy seed. So at least in Abraham's heart, he knew, hey, son, it's going to be okay. I'm going to miss you. I love you. I'm going to be obedient unto the Father. But the Father has reassured me that, he's going to be, the boy's going to be fine. He's going to be taken care of. And so again, now the emotions, everything that's going on, and, we kind of pick it up from there. But, I just see Abraham as having this he has a just really big compassionate heart for family, for the Father, of course. And you see him making these tough decisions. And these are tough decisions, guys, to make, because you're basically taking someone that you love and saying, I'll probably never see you again the rest of my life. Or,
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and Joe, I think you're exactly right. When we look at Abraham and how he got to this point, he's already gone through a lot of these tough choices, and he's already felt the sting of failure in the first opportunity where he says, I'll promise you a son with your wife, and he kind of goes and has the first child with Hagar. He's already kind of broken God's trust a little bit. He's already said, maybe it's my way and not your way. Maybe I didn't trust you fully. So now he's saying, hey, God told me that it's going to be okay. And I think he's like, you know what? I dealt with this last time. I'm not going to deal with this again. I'm going to watch this work out into fruition. And again, what I've loved about Abraham, and I've probably said this multiple videos now, is Abraham showed the qualities and the heart of the Father. Because what did the Father do to his own son? Sent him into the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights and let him be tempted by Satan. And what is Abraham doing here? He's letting his son, his beloved son, his literally first son, right, go off into the wilderness into a period of testing. And I'm not saying there's a direct correlation, but if you watch Abraham's life over and over and over again, because what does he do with Isaac? Takes him up to the mountain to do what? Sacrifice him.
Yeah.
So you watch Abraham's conduct and Abraham's life story, and you're going to start to line them up. And you're like, I'm not calling Abraham the father by any means, but wow, is the connections there? Are the stories lining up? Is the semblances there? And you see, Abraham's a man. He's sinned. He's fallible. He's messed up. The father's never messed up, but yet you see that heart still play out. And so that's why I think when we read through, the scriptures, it tells us, God judges at our heart. What kind of heart did Abraham have? He had a heart after the Father, truly had a heart after the Father. I'm willing to do the same thing that you're going to have to do one day. I'm willing to put myself in such a dire position that the world would look at this situation as ridiculous, impossible, and you hate that child and you hate everybody and everything's bad. And he's like, I trust God. I don't know why. I don't know how, but God's got a way, and He's going to come through because He promised.
Yeah. The other thing I would say about Abraham too is he was not only did he have a big heart and a heart for the Father, but he was a man's man. Let's not forget this guy was 75 years old when he went to battle when he knew that Lot and his family were taken.
Yep.
Abraham didn't play. He's like, how many I got? 300 or whatever it was. Like, was it 300, 318, right? Or something like that?
318, yeah.
Yeah, 318. He's like, all right, y'all boys, we're going to take care of business. That 75-year-old man girded up his loins and went to battle and won and came back with everybody. And was like, so not only did he have a soft heart, but at the same time, he's like, you don't mess with my family. You don't mess with the family. We call Abraham the Godfather. You know, and something else, guys, I'd like to bring up in 10 is we keep seeing the verbiage here of him being a child, and I'm trying to remember.
Well,
Maybe guys
he was dancing at least. I mean, you know.
Well,
and,
no,
he's old enough.
He's way past teenager. I actually want to say at this point in the story that he's almost a young adult. So when you read at face value, when we read the Genesis account, it uses the term child. But I think I'm trying to remember. I thought I knew this at one point.
Well, if he was getting weaned, isn't that like from
no?
that's
Isaac.
Yeah, that was Isaac that was being weaned.
Yeah,
but it does say that she took him and cast him under a tree. So I don't think he was quite adult. Maybe young teens or something like that, or teens or
well,
whatever.
I want to say he was like 14 when he got circumcised, wasn't he?
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, we probably could go back and find that.
Yeah, I think he was 14 when they circumcised, and then Isaac's not even born yet. So if we're looking at 14, and then by the time he's weaned, I mean, this dude could be 19 years old.
If that's the case, then that means this boy is in real bad shape. He's leaning on mom as they're struggling going through the desert here.
He was the gangly youth.
And as he's stumbling around, she finally says, "I can't hold you up no more, boy," and drops him. It's probably less of a casting him and more of a dropping him under a tree.
Yeah. Let's do a little quick search on that gentleman and see what we come up with, because I think he was definitely a teenager. He wasn't a small child.
Okay, so we did some quick math and did some figuring on some events that had played out in throughout their lives, as far as when circumcision happened and when Isaac was born, all that kind of stuff. Joe, fill us in on that.
Yeah, so we don't have a clear number yet as far as when Isaac would have been weaned, but we know from the time that Ishmael was circumcised to the time Isaac was born, he was about 14 years old. So this story, anywhere I would say from 15 to really almost to 19 years old, is the age of Ishmael when him and his mother were sent away. So we're not talking about a little boy, even though it's using the term in here. It says, like right here in 10, it says, "Let me not see the death of my child." It kind of keeps saying like child, as you think of a little, like she's going out in the desert with like a little baby.
Right.
This is practically a young adult.
I mean, he's definitely a teenager.
He's definitely a teenager. You guys see his beard starting to come in real nice. I mean, I don't know, but if my best guess would be between 17 to 19 is the age that they were sent out. That's my best shot at it.
All right, so
Jonathan,
we're looking at low end 14, high end 19. But I gotta say this: if this child is 19 years old, then that means a lot of time has gone by between the time that Isaac was born and being weaned. That that would put Isaac being weaned at like age 5, and I'm not saying that's impossible, but woo,
yeah,
that's
man.
Awkward, you know what I mean? So we'll just leave it at that. So sometime between 14 and 19. However, if somebody wants to do the math on the Jubilees and all that stuff, let us know down in the comments.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, and I think one of the beautiful things, we're talking about how old this child is. One, Hagar starting to see the fruition of her child. She's saying, "Hey, you're about to come of age any minute now, essentially, and we're ready to see you inherit some stuff and start to take over some of the family business or some of the family deeds that are going on." And so that's why you see she has the exact same heart as Sarah. They're just on two opposite ends of the spectrum, but she's like, "I love this kid no matter what." And Sarah's saying the same thing, "I love my kid no matter what," which tells you a lot about mothers. It tells you a lot about that relationship between a son and a mom. And that mom would go to great lengths to make sure her son is the best and taken care of and has everything that's needed. But when we look at in verse 10, where it says, "Let me not see the death of my child," she's saying, I understand that this kid may not be the child of promise, and I understand that Abraham's got this whole other side thing going on that didn't really involve me, but now it involves me. But she's saying all that doesn't matter. This is still my kid. She's not saying let him inherit all this stuff, and Abraham promised me all this gold and riches. She just said, just don't let me see my kid die. You know what I mean? And I love the heart of the mom in both the moms in this scenario.
Yeah, John, I think you hit it right on the head there, brother, because when you were talking about it, if he was, let's say, 17 to 19 years old, at some point now, you're going into your manhood. Let's say for the sake of it, he's 19. A lot of things we see in the Bible at the age of 20 is the age of accountability.
That's exactly where I was about to go with
I
this.
stole it from you, brother.
You stole it from me. Yes, I was going to go there, man. What if that mocking he was doing was, I'm about to be 20. I'm about to take over.
Well, when that's funny, because when we were looking up this behind the scenes that you guys didn't see, one of the places that we looked up said he was 19 and a half. No, I'm sorry. It said it was 19. It was his half brother. Never mind. So
okay,
strike that one from the record. But again, like you said, if he's 19 and Sarah's going, and Abraham's over there, and she knows the heart of Abraham, that maybe he's a little soft in there, and that this boy's at the age now, because this is what's going to happen. At some point in the family lineage here, someone has to be taught the family business, and usually that's the son that's going to be taking over the family business, the one that's going to be the heir. We look further down the line, we look at with Jacob and what's his brother's name? Esau, that's it. We see how important this is, that we see that Esau was a man of the hunt. He was always out, he was away. And you see that Jacob was in the tent. So now what was Jacob doing? Jacob was learning the family business. He was already being groomed to be the inheritance of this ahead of time. And because his brother didn't want anything to do with it anyway, because his brother was out doing his own thing. So we see in this story here, I think that's where we're seeing that come into play, gentlemen, is that mom's looking, just like you said, mom's right, Jonathan, for the best interest of her son Isaac, going, oh no, this boy's 19, and I know Abraham's soft heart. He's going to start showing him the ropes. He's going to start doing this. It's going to be even harder down the road for Abraham to make that transition and go, sorry, son, that I did all this with you, but now I can't let you have any of it because it's now going to my other son. Mm-hmm. So now, in the wisdom of this, God's saying, listen to your wife, because this is going to cause problems down the road. Go ahead and let him go, because, and by the way, in verse 7 says, don't worry about him. I'm going to take care of him. So in 7 it says, but as for the son of this bondwoman, I will make him a great nation, because he is of thy seed. So all this makes more and more sense as we're going through this. He's saying, hey, Abraham, don't worry about it. We're going to take care of it, because if you don't let him go now, this is going to be a bigger problem down the road. And so all of this plays out to the way it's supposed to play out. No one's getting hurt. No one dies. In this, and in the grace of our Heavenly Father is like, hey, God's like, hey, God could have easily said to them both, this wasn't the plan, and so good luck on life, guys. It's like, no, but God says, by the way, I know you stepped out because you thought this was the way, but Abraham, because you do have a heart for me, and you love me, and you've proven over and over again that you love me. Don't worry about it. I'm going to take care of your son, and everything's going to be okay.
Yeah. By the way, I do want to point this out too, being as you brought up that verse 7 again, right over here on the side, guys. I think this is pretty important too. So in here it says, I will make him a great nation. And over here on the right, it talks about the Septuagint and other versions of scripture that we have. Shows in Genesis 21:13, it has the word great in there, just like it does here. It says that he will be a great nation. But the Masoretic text omits the word great. And I'm sure that was intentional.
Yeah, seems to be. Especially when we can find it in multiple other places.
Yeah. All right, Joe, give us some good news.
All right, here's the good news. Let's finish this one out. All right, we're going to start in verse 11, guys. And an angel of Elohim, one of the holy ones, said unto her, why weepest thou, Hagar? Arise and take the child and hold him in thine hand, for Elohim hath heard thy voice and hath seen the child. And she opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water, and she went and filled her bottle with water, and she gave her child to drink, and she arose and went towards the wilderness of Paran. And the child grew and became an archer, and Elohim was with him, and his mother took him a wife wife from among the daughters of Egypt. And she bare him a son, and he called his name Nebaioth, for she saith, Yahuwah was nigh to me when I called upon him.
Two things I want to point out. So again, we have that issue that I brought up a minute ago about the Masoretic text leaving out the word great. Here it says Elohim was with him. And then down below, when it comes to his name, to the name of his son, it says Yahuwah was nigh to me when I called upon him. And that's the reason for this child being named what he was named. And I got to be honest with you, there was very, very little information to be found regarding this name. And the only thing that I find as far as in the Hebrew, what the biblical name Nebaioth means is words, prophecies, buds. That's it. No sentence, no direct correlation to something. So again, that's a simple internet search, but we'll see if we can dig into this. Maybe if somebody wants to do a little word study or a name study or break down that name in the Hebrew and see if they can come up with something in the comments, that would be awesome. I'd really appreciate that because it appears to me that there's maybe some information being hidden about that, possibly.
Yeah. Do you think this is possibly a Egyptian word? And that's why we're not finding as much information about it. I mean, his mother is Egyptian. That's where they picked her up at. So anyway, that's my thought, is that it's an Egyptian name that we don't have a lot of information about. Possibly.
Yeah, possible for sure. I think one of the interesting correlations that I made was whenever they were still out in the wilderness, she went off a bow shot away, and he ended up being an archer. I thought that was very interesting about why those words were chosen and what way did that impact, his future. I know a lot of times we say that we can, raise up our children and we can kind of point them in the direction. So I wonder if she had anything to do with that. And like, that was something like in her background of why she described how far away she was. I went a bow shot away. How familiar was she with bows? Did she shoot them often? And then how did he turn around and say, oh, I want to be an archer now because that's what my mama showed me. Just thoughts, just curious.
What I think is interesting too is when the angels show up, they always ask a question. It seems like, "Hey, why are you weeping for? Why thou weepeth?" Which I'm sure the angel wasn't speaking old English. Why thou weepeth, woman? but it's kind of like, why are you weeping? So this kind of maybe tells me maybe she understood that the father was going to, we don't get the full conversation between what's going on between Abraham and Hagar when she's leaving. He very well could have said to her, "Hey, don't worry about it. The father's already spoken to me, and you guys are going to be okay." And so when the angel shows up, he's like, "Hey, don't you remember the words, so to speak, of what was spoken to you? Why weepest thou, Hagar? Arise, take the child and hold him in thy hand, for Elohim hath seen." You didn't went up too far. I was reading it.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. "For Elohim hath heard thy voice and hath seen the child." So the angel shows up and he's kind of like, "Hey, there's no more need for crying. It's time to get your child, and it's time to move on. By the way, there's a well over there. Got some water. You can fill your one bottle that was given to you." So and everything's good. But that was a good point you made there, Jonathan, about there's the play on words there. A bow shot away. He later becomes an archer. Who knows? But
you think this well was possibly put there by this angel? I mean, she could see it from where she was.
Right. Well, the terminology in that, and maybe it's a play on words again. In 12, it says, "And she opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water, and she went and filled her bottle with water, and she gave the child to drink." So yeah,
remember, because she laid down to die, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
So did she just not see this well right there?
Sometimes we don't see it when it's in front of us either, guys.
I mean, I'm saying that's a possibility for sure, but
when
is
you're
this
at
something
the
that was
point,
provided?
maybe it's one of those things where you're literally at the point where you're like just giving up on life, and then you don't realize, hey, by the way, the angel kind of goes, "By the way, it's right there. If you just look right there," and it says she opened her eyes, and, "Oh, well, there it is."
Yeah.
And so, hey, just goes to show you that sometimes where we are mentally in life, that the Father could have a provision right in front of us, and we never see it until He goes, "Hey, by the way, look to the right. No, a little bit more. There you go. Right there. There it is. There's your provision right there, God."
I love this right here, and going right out of that into 13. Elohim was with him. It's like the Father was always there to make sure that he was provided for. He was taken care of. Awesome.
Well, so yeah, we just dug into so much meat and potatoes into this portion here. We're learning about Ishmael and Isaac and Abraham and Hagar and Sarah and all their kind of drama in the family and all that. But what did we really learn? We really learned that Abraham listened to the Father. Abraham did not forget any of the promises that were given to him. Abraham was faithful, especially this time around, and doing exactly what the father told him. But what's really, really cool was we kind of diminished the role of Hagar. We kind of say, oh, she was the side conversation. She was a side situation. And what do we see? The angel of the Lord, one of God's holy ones, came to her, right? So was she of non-importance? Was her role diminished in any way? No, God sent one of his own special messengers, one of his own angels, to speak to her directly. And what was the result of that? Life, restoration, and the continuing of his promise and his covenant with Abraham in the first place. She has now left Abraham. She's no longer in his household. She's no longer under his spiritual headship or anything that we would look at and say, oh, Abraham made all this happen. She was on her own, but yet God's promise still remained. God's provision still remained. He restored their life and even had success for her and their new land, finding him a wife and them even having children and continuing the family line as promised exactly by the Father in the first place.
Yeah. So with that, we will see you next time for part 2 of chapter 17 in the book of Jubilees. God bless.
Ciao.
Shalom. You come into my desert, mess with my family. I take care of business. Capiche?
The whole desert?
The whole desert. It's all mine.
God made me walk it in the last episode.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,